Greetings. Welcome to 2022 Worlds in Transition. I'm Rose Marcus. Let me give you a little rundown of what to expect in the year ahead. And certainly 2021 has been a long, hard grind for so many people. It's been devastating for a lot of people. And at the start of the year, I looked forward and went, oh my God, this year is just never going to end. And here it is, gone in the blink of an eye already. So 2022 is packed with some pretty important planetary influences. And let me move to my next slide. The first thing is we have Venus, a really important Venus transit. So Venus is in the sign, transiting the sign of Capricorn. Usually Venus is about a 3-week cycle, but because of the current retrograde cycle, which is already in the works, started on December 19 and goes to January 29 of 2022, we will experience Venus in Capricorn for 4 months. Started in November and it doesn't end until March 6th. So wherever you have Capricorn in your natal chart, that Venus transit is going to spend a very, very long time helping you work through an evaluation process. Venus is the planet of value and meaning. It's the relationship archetype. And it's the yin principle, our response mechanisms. And when Venus is activated, we move through a chapter of at looking at relationships. And as I always say, the most important relationship you have is the one with yourself. Venus corresponds to the archetype of inner hearing. And as we tune inward and we listen, we're looking to find value and meaning from within, and whatever it is that has value and meaning is what we vibrate with, or what it's our magnetic energy field, and that's how we attract. So Venus, like attracting like. Venus in Capricorn, Capricorn is a very serious archetype, and it corresponds to, it's the archetype of reality. It's the archetype of the conditioned consciousness. So Venus in Capricorn, we've got two things going on. What is going on, the inner process, and how that's being reflected through the circumstances of the reality that you find yourself in. Capricorn is about coming to the end. It is about the limits and the limitations. It's about the search for one's authenticity in terms of taking control and being in charge of creating the life that you want to live. Capricorn deals with all our externals. It also deals with duty, obligation, and so forth. Capricorn's an archetype that corresponds to things like your career, your debt load, and so forth, right? Parenting and your role as a parent, or your relationship with your aging parents. It's got to do with many different things along that line. Suffice to say, when Venus is retrograde, it takes us through an important evaluation, reassessment process, where we take a look at what is a value, and where we are placing value on perpetuating more of the same, or carrying the heavy load, or whatever the statement might be on that. So Venus retrograde is a time to pull back and to spend some time listening to your own beating heart, to the sounds of your own soul as it stirs within you and gives you some information. Capricorn is the archetype of time, and you may have a sense of the momentousness of this particular moment along your own timeline. You may be feeling it's time to end something, whether that is a career, a relationship, a way of life. And at the same time, Capricorn's a duality archetype. As something is coming to an end, something else is getting started. And it is whatever it is that's getting started. You might not have the full parameters of what that is. It's really important to give it room, or give it space, or give it time. And Venus in Capricorn gives you an extended period of time to prepare, to get ready, to do the finishing touches, to get yourself organized, to get it under better control so that you can move on to next chapters, which certainly are going to happen at the start of March. March is going to be like a springboard time. The retrograde cycle, if you have any planets, as you see on the screen here, the retrograde cycle starts about 26 degrees of Capricorn. It's going to back up to 11 degrees, and then it's going to cross those degrees again. So even before the retrograde cycle started, something was building. And let me say that Venus retrograde is a really important cycle for all of us because it brings up or dials up the unfinished business of relationships. So if there's something that you feel incomplete with on an emotional level, on an actual level, you're probably going to be readdressing it. And that corresponds to relationships of the past. And so the cycle is one of fatedness or destiny. And there are two parts to that, the unfinished business. So you can feel your sense to itself to not quite be complete with a relationship that you might just have ended. That could reconnect you with that person to take it a little bit further. Or, there's two things with it. You finish off the past, or you reconnect with the past in order to move it to a new level, move it into a new chapter. So that fatedness or destiny, it's things that are ripe and ready for this time has come moment. And that could be a circumstance of your life. You could step onto a career path or a lifestyle or a relationship and so forth. It is a time is ripe, time is ready moment for you to be stepping into a next chapter. So this is the Venus retrograde cycle. And as you see on the screen, aspects of note, Venus is aligned with Pluto, and Pluto is the agent of the soul. Pluto is the bigger picture perspective on your evolution, and this is the key and core evolutionary program, the desires of the soul for your own growth. And whenever Pluto is being emphasized, and it's an acceleration of soul desires, and it's an acceleration of evolution, it's an acceleration of circumstances. So you're going to find that, a play has started, and these dates on the screen, December 11, December 25, which both are past now, and March 3rd, this is it is marking the time on an evolutionary process. With Pluto, we take something and we evolve it, and it turns into something else, right? So by the time we get to March 3rd, Venus and Pluto in their cycle, in their orbit, that's a one-year journey. Venus and Pluto hook up, every year to start a new process in terms of the desires of the soul. And I must say that Venus will also conjunct Pluto at the end of 2022. I think it's December 28th, might be wrong on that, but again, in the sign of Capricorn. So we are starting a program right now that is intensified through the beginning of March. March is going to be springboard time for the next level up. Capricorn deals with the existing reality. So Venus and Pluto is about evaluating that existing reality and working through it and watching it evolve and shapeshift. Okay. Venus conjunct Mars, February 16 and March 6. Now, Venus and Mars are the relationship duo. Mars is the action, assertion, and cutting edge of soul desires in any given moment, and Venus is the response, element of that. Venus, Mars, work together as a planetary pair, and they are a 2-year cycle. Every 2 years, we are processing the next level of relationships, and again, as I say, me to me, me to you, and me to us. And so we're working through a process with Venus and Mars. And on March 6th, and Mars in February will be in the sign of Capricorn. And it's very, very interesting because as Venus finishes her retrograde, at the end of January. She will be slow in her orbit through the month of February. So Venus and Mars are going to toggle. They're going to be in a unit working through something. And so they're going to be going at it hard. We've got Mercury also in the sign of Capricorn from January 25th to February 14, joining that grouping together. So know whatever it is, there's a goal that your soul has set up for you. That's Capricorn, a goalpost to reach, a finish line to reach. Something is going to be solidified. And when we have that length of time to solidify it, it's good because it takes time to go through a process. Time is a Capricorn archetype. But hitting that trigger on March 6th, the new Venus-Mars cycle is at 1 degree Aquarius. And that's fascinating because at the end of 2020, on the winter solstice, Jupiter and Saturn started a whole new 140-year journey at 0 degrees Aquarius as well, too. And in 2023, we'll get our first taster of Pluto moving into Aquarius as well, too. So this Venus-Mars conjunction is a trigger for that Jupiter-Saturn transit that started at the end of 2020 on the winter solstice, and also a preliminary trigger for Pluto's entrance into Aquarius, a 20-year cycle that'll start in March of 2023. And additionally, Pluto and Mars is a 2-year cycle as well, too. And on March 3rd, they are going to start their next chapter as well, too. So we have Venus-Pluto, Venus-Mars, and Mars-Pluto all together in the first week of March. So look to that time frame for springboard time. And January 8 is the inferior conjunction of Venus and the Sun. A retrograde cycle is that planet's relationship to the Sun. And when that planet and the Sun align, that's the midpoint peak of the retrograde cycle. Now, Venus always travels very close to the Sun, so the only alignment it can make with the Sun is a conjunction there. And so it comes to inferior conjunction, which means that that Venus is, the alignment is Earth, Venus, and Sun. So the Venus position is very close to us. And that starts a new 9-month cycle for 2022. Venus will be a morning star. And this is very interesting as well, too, noting what's going on with Russia and Ukraine, because the ancients, when Venus came out of hiding, you know, when she's at conjunction, you can't see her. It's a little while later when she becomes a morning apparition. And that was a time that the ancients chose to wage war. So Venus in her morning apparition is the goddess of war. And so we can expect aggression in 2022. And I don't doubt that there will be some action there with Russia and Ukraine and, you know, all the things that's a hot button there. October 22nd will be the superior conjunction, and that's again when Venus and the Sun line up, and then it'll be Earth, Sun, and Venus. Venus will be on the far side of the Sun, and that's what a superior conjunction is about. And then it will move to its evening, you know, the goddess of love, right? And at that point, it'll be at 29 degrees of Libra, which is very interesting because it's a culminating degree. The 18 degree of Capricorn for the inferior conjunction is very, very important. So if you have planets at any of the degrees that you see on the screen here, it's going to be a very, very important year for you in terms of relationship dynamics. Venus, by the way, you know, love and money, right? You know, so it deals with, you know, our material world, deals with the financial end of things. It deals with relationship things, and Venus is also a mortality archetype. Capricorn is also a mortality archetype, and certainly that's forefront to our concerns right now with the pandemic raging on. All right, and just to give you, a quickie on that as well, too, as you can see, the January 8, the graphic I have here on the screen, when that alignment is here, and so for the travel, Venus will be moving around and being morning on its morning apparition until it gets to October, when it'll then move to the evening half. So Venus is 9 months. As a morning star, 9 months as an evening star, 18 months in its cycle. And Venus has this beautiful, beautiful symmetry. I have Laura Perkins to thank for this graphic that I have here on the screen here. And Venus in its movement around the sun forms the five-pointed star, the Rosetta pattern. I won't talk about that too much today, but let me say that the superior conjunction in October of 2022 at 29 degrees, it's been 150 years since that last conjunction was a star point, one of these points on the pentagram. Okay, so I'm going to leave that for the moment. We are moving forward with the great conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn, which is a 140-year cycle, and now we're having this mutation going on, moving to the sign of Libra and the sign of Air. All right, so moving to Jupiter. Jupiter is a huge transit to talk about. It's a huge planet as well, too. So the big guy here. Jupiter for 2022, on December 28 of 2021, Jupiter entered Pisces. It's a one-year transit through a sign. And if you think back 12 years ago, whatever was happening for you then, whatever was on the increase, or whatever was growing for you then, Jupiter is transiting the same place in your chart. So from December 28, now Jupiter is moving very fast through the sign of Pisces. From December 28 to May 10 is going to be traveling through Pisces. And then it's going to take a quick dip for a few months there, May 10 to October 27. Jupiter is going to move into Aries. It will retrograde there and back out October 27 to December 20th. It's going to revisit Pisces. And then December 20th, it will move into Aries for the first start of 2023. The retrograde cycle, July 28 to November 23, Jupiter will make it all the way to 8.5 of Aries before it turns retrograde. It's just going to dip back into Pisces at the end of the retrograde cycle. From October 27 to November 23rd, it'll be retrograde in Pisces. So again, as I said earlier, the midpoint peak of any retrograde cycle is the alignment of that planet with the sun, and Jupiter and the sun will be opposite one another on September 26th. And so that's when Jupiter will be in its closest proximity to the Earth as well, too. So, Jupiter at that time as well, too, at that point at the Sun, Jupiter opposition will be at 3.5 degrees Aries Libra. Aries Libra is a relationship, what I need for myself and what I need from other. And so the Jupiter transit is very, very important this year. Jupiter, was the ancient ruler of Pisces, and on April 12 of 2022, we are going to have a momentous conjunction, a grand conjunction of Jupiter and Neptune in the sign of Pisces. And here it is on the screen. I'm circling it with my cursor, 2358 Pisces. There's Neptune, there's Jupiter here. And the last conjunction was in 1856. And the next conjunction will be 2188. So this is a 167-year cycle. Every 13 years, Jupiter and Neptune will join forces, and they will do that, moving a sign, every 13 years. But it is only 167 years when Jupiter and Neptune will be conjunct in the sign of Pisces. Now, Neptune is the ruling planet of Pisces, and Jupiter is the traditional or ancient ruler of Pisces, so that makes this even more important. So Pisces is the sign of the fish, and of course they swim on two different levels, right? So first of all, Pisces, it's the ocean of consciousness. All right, so Pisces is our search for our ultimates. Everything ultimate, our ultimate ideals, our ultimate salvation, our ultimate purpose, our ultimate vocation. What is the ultimate value and meaning for us as a collective and on an individual level? It's all about our aspirations and our ideals. Our search for our ultimate other, which we look for the soulmate, but it's also Jupiter, Neptune is our search for the ultimate other, which is the divine, God, goddess, however you might describe that. It is the archetype of attunement. And when, Jupiter and Neptune are in the sign of Pisces, it's about collective attunement. We're all tuning in. As I said, Venus is the archetype of inner hearing or inner listening, and it's how we vibrate, and that's a personal journey. Neptune is the higher octave of Venus. So we've got this really important Venus transit that's dominating the first quarter of 2022, and we'll see it back again in the fall at the very end of the year. And then we have this Jupiter-Neptune conjunction, which I call 2022 the high watermark level of the pandemic. It's a watershed year for the collective, and perhaps a turning point. And why do I say that? When Jupiter and Neptune are at such a conjunction, which I say happens, every 13 years, the whole collective is tuning in, like we did with Diana, Princess Diana's death, and the kind of outpouring of emotion. When Jupiter and Neptune are together, this is a global experience. It's a mass consciousness. Masses of people leave the planet at the same time. Masses of people are exposed or experience the same thing at the same time. And certainly this conjunction is, it's a statement for the pandemic as well, too. We're all in it together. There's no degree of separation here. Pisces rules the immune system. And when I looked at the transits for 2021, and the fact that the karmic axis was in dynamic tension to Neptune in Pisces, and that was again along the Sagittarius Gemini nodal axis, Sagittarius being nature, and Gemini being variance and human, person-to-person transmission. I looked at that and I said, the pandemic's going to go on for another 18 months at least. And of course, here we are at 18 months later. It rules many different things. So when you have Jupiter and Neptune, Jupiter is a planet of expansion. It puts everything on the increase. And a lot of people look to Jupiter as a good luck archetype. And it certainly is what we call the greater benefic, and it can bring blessings to your life. But Jupiter, wherever it goes, is going to increase whatever it touches. So if you are feeling a sense of loss, Jupiter in Pisces can, or disillusionment, which is a Pisces archetype, Jupiter and Neptune can certainly increase that. If you're feeling hopeful, and if you're finding, a greater relationship with the divine, if you feel called to the spiritual path, then Jupiter Neptune is going to open that up as well, too. There's so many things to say about this Jupiter-Neptune conjunction. Jupiter, I think that, one of the search for our ultimate salvation here with the pandemic is, we're all striving for herd immunity, and, we will get to herd immunity. Jupiter-Neptune, it's really bouncing around with the pandemic. There's so many things to say about its water. It's all about the water. We have the stirring of the ocean currents here, the rising sea levels. We have global warming that is, of course, we've got flooding going on, and we've got the melting of the polar caps, and we've got the doomsday, we've got doomsday glacier. We've got so many different things that this Jupiter-Neptune conjunction speaks to. The attention that's going on social services, and Neptune rules hospitals, and our hospitals are overwhelmed. There's so many different items that I could talk about with this. Neptune rules drugs and alcohol, and certainly we have an opioid crises to be dealing with, and so on. Neptune, it's the archetype of loss and disillusionment, but it's also the archetype of faith and belief and imagining and dreaming and inspiring and imagination. So Jupiter and Neptune, I think in this coming year, we'll see like very incredible things take place in terms of creativity, and that creativity, inspirations. Jupiter and Neptune is iconic people doing iconic things, and iconic moments in time. And certainly we have all of that wrapped up into this Jupiter-Neptune. And I say that it's really important for us to look for inspiration and to look for hope and to try to rise above. That's Jupiter and Neptune. So Jupiter and Neptune will reward you if you can open up and find your faith again. That's what I'll say about that. I have lots more to say about that. I'll be doing more talks in the future on the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction. I mentioned this a few moments ago about the nodal axis shift. And as of January 18, and this is the true nodes for astrologers out there, 2022 through July 17 of 2023, the nodal axis is going to do a sign shift, moving out of the south node in Sagittarius to the south node in Scorpio, and for the north node to move out of Gemini and into Taurus. This is the nodal axis travel through the 12 signs of the zodiacal wheel. It moves backwards in its sign axis. So the south node, we say, is a composite of the past, and the north node is the evolutionary forward. And Taurus is all about getting grounded or getting rooted and so forth, right? So I think that as we move forward through this nodal axis developmental curve, of course, Scorpio is a process of elimination. It's a process of peeling the layers back. It is a process of confronting shadow, and certainly we've got a lot of shadow to confront, right? So South Node in Scorpio is going to continue to strip it away, strip it away, strip it away, until we find the gold there for us. And Scorpio, in terms of confronting of choice makings as well too, resistance is futile when it comes to the evolutionary program. And the sooner that we get on board with the fact that, radical change is upon us, and certainly getting on board with climate change initiatives, which are so vastly important. The weather extremes that we experienced in 2021 are going to continue and intensify. Jupiter in Aries. Aries is an archetype of fire. Jupiter in Pisces is an archetype of water. And we've had, wildfires, and we've had massive flooding, and we've had weather extremes like, volcanic activity and earthquakes and tornadoes, and all of these things are continuing, right? So the North Node in Taurus, it's interesting as the Arctic is melting in Greenland, there's more discovery of rare earth minerals, and that's certainly a signature of Taurus. So it is important for us to simplify and get back to what is most natural, and to to get better grounded in our own personal and private life journeys, to get better, self-sufficiency and self-reliance is very important for a Taurus archetype. Simplify your life and hold true to the things that are of most value and meaning. And, that means living a good quality life right where you are. The spring eclipses, we have in any given year, we will have 4 to 6 eclipses. And in 2022, we have 4. And note that both of the lunar eclipses are total. So the total eclipses pack a greater punch than partial eclipses. Certainly eclipses will be relevant to you if they make direct contact with your chart. Otherwise, you're going to note them in the world in some kind of dynamic way. Eclipses are accelerators of evolution, and the fact that they are aligned with the nodal axis or the karmic axis, they dial up the karmic nature, the fated circumstances of life. So of the eclipses in the spring, April 30th and May 15, all the eclipses are going to run along Taurus Scorpio. The spring eclipses are in dynamic tension to Saturn, which is still traveling through the sign of Aquarius until March of 2023. So I think we're going to need to practice that social distancing all the way through that Saturn and Aquarius transit. In the fall, as you can see, we have an eclipse on October 25th at 2 degrees Scorpio. And that partial eclipse at 2 degrees of Scorpio has Venus conjunct it. So again, that's going to be very relevant to everything to do with economics and relationship and influences to do with mortality. And the total lunar eclipse on November 8 at 16 degrees Taurus Scorpio, November 8 is the USA midterm election. So that's going to be quite important. Mentioning the spring eclipses with Saturn in Aquarius, I think the whole year is going to be volatile for politics the worldwide over. Not only the US. And these are for students of astrology, the actual eclipses. So you can see on April 30th, the position of Venus is conjunct Jupiter, which is quite interesting. And the solar eclipse at 10 Taurus is very, very close to Uranus. So know that can springboard something unexpected. And here's the eclipse on May 15. The moon is 25 degrees Scorpio and the sun is 25 degrees Taurus. And there's that Saturn position at almost 25 degrees Aquarius. So there's quite a lot of pressure. Powder keg or pressure point there. And Mars is conjunct Neptune as well, too, in the sign of Pisces. So Pisces always, it's something you didn't see coming. And of course, this is shortly, just days after Jupiter moves into the sign of Aries. So again, this is going to be quite a hot trigger in May. And here are the eclipses for the fall, October 25. And there is the eclipse at 2 degrees Scorpio with Venus. If you have anything at early degrees of the fixed signs, and that will be Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius, this will be a very dynamic eclipse for you in terms of relationship and finances, and again, survival issues. Taurus Scorpio polarity of the nodal axis brings up survival issues at all levels. That's your emotional, orientation, your psychological orientation, your circumstances, your relationships, your career, all of it. It's like, can I survive this, right? It's that push-pull. Emotionally and actually. The November 8 eclipse, again, as I say, is relevant to USA politics because that's the midterm election. And at that point, at the end of the year, we will have Mars has already in this chart turned retrograde. Mars turns retrograde. Geez, I've got the dates here someplace at the end of October through the beginning of 2023, and it's in the sign of Gemini. Moving through the USA chart. Let me see if that's on the next screen. Yes, moving through the USA chart. There are many birth charts for the USA. I use the 2:31 a.m. birth time, which gives the USA Gemini rising. So the Mars retrograde cycle would be going through the first house of the chart. And certainly Gemini rules the opinion of the people, and it is another statement for politics. And when Mars turns retrograde in the sign of Gemini, you have trouble with neighbors. So of course, Canada and the US are neighbors, Mexico and US are neighbors. And of course, it deals with, the world over with political activity. And I have the USA chart on the screen here because 2022 is a very, very important year for the USA, not only because of that midterm election, but because it's sort of a birthday of sorts. It's the Pluto return, which anybody who has been investigating astrology at all will have heard many, many, many astrologers talk about that. February 21st is the first hit of Pluto's return to the same position that it was when at the inception of the country, and 27 degrees Capricorn. So there's my arrow point right there. Pluto will, because of its retrograde cycle, it will back up over that transit. Again, where are my dates here? I think it's July 11 and December 28, the next two alignments of that transit. I've got it someplace in my PowerPoint here, so it's not in my head right at this moment. But Pluto's transit through Capricorn, 2008 to 2024. As I've said many times in my writings and presentations, Pluto swings its wrecking ball on any structure, system, consciousness, or reality that has outworn its time has come. Capricorn is the archetype of coming to the end of a long journey. Well, a new journey is underway. And certainly we see that at the end of an era, all the unfinished business must be addressed. And that's why we have so much going on with issues of racism. Capricorn rules skin, gender orientation. Capricorn and its counterpart Cancer dial up gender matters. Our relationship to external authority, it's kind of the breakdown of the system. That's Capricorn. Borders, boundaries, governments, empires rise and fall under that transit. So Capricorn rules all those kinds of things. It's coming to, the limits of what is possible or designated for this particular moment along the timeline. And very interesting in this chart as well too is note the position of Saturn, which is 17 degrees Aquarius, right on the USA moon at 18 degrees Aquarius. And of course, there's a great deal of pressure by the authority, Capricorn, by the powers that be. Capricorn's an archetype of duty, responsibility, and obligation. So the great, added responsibility on the government to the people. Cancer is an archetype of the people. Of course, Aquarius deals with politics and kind of upheaval, and certainly there's great controversy and conflict, and it's all of that. So that's keeping the kind of the real crunchy bit of politics. It's it's just really people are very reactive. That's an Aquarius theme, and it's kind of busting apart. It's hard to get things under control. Getting things under control under a Pluto transit is very difficult because things are always shifting and changing, right? It's hard to stabilize anything, and so we've got a lot of pressure on governments to maintain or regain control. And of course, there's it's a moving target. There's always just so much that is flaring up in terms of all of that. And it's a breakdown of the system, the social, system, political, economic, the whole 9 yards. And of course, Saturn, Uranus also, it's a statement for climate change and all the pressures of that. And by the way, Capricorn also rules banking and banking systems and so forth. And certainly we have a lot of action there. So many different things to talk about. The Jupiter-Neptune conjunction takes place right here. You can't see it, but it's 23 degrees Neptune, and the USA Neptune is 22 degrees, almost 23 degrees of Virgo. So that Neptune Jupiter transit, again, here has that sense of collective disillusionment, the search for ultimate solutions, and masses of people being affected by the circumstances of the day. So we have so many different things to talk about. I can only do a short synopsis for you. Here are some key dates. I've run through some of them already for you. January 8, Venus and the Sun. You'll feel this as we're still on a finishing, and when Venus is retrograde, it can hold things up or delay, kind of progress or so on. But again, as I say, it's an excellent time for regrouping and getting back in touch with what is most meaningful and productive and useful for you. But on January 8, you may feel a sense of a shift. Certainly here, schools have been delayed for their opening, and that is the weekend. So, in some cases, school will be delayed till Monday the 10th. So you can feel there's a shift of a phase. You're still in that processing, but there'll be a shift taking place. It might be subtle, it might be obvious in terms of the circumstances, but we're going to see that shift about January 8 to January 29. Venus ends retrograde in Capricorn. On January 18, it's that nodal axis sign change, South Node in Scorpio, North Node in Taurus. Again, if you have fixed signs, concentration in your chart, then these are going to be relevant. They're going to take you through a more dynamic, choice making, fated sense of circumstance, and evolution. February 22nd, the USA Pluto returned the triple paths, July 28 and July 11 and December 28. I think I said that earlier. March 3rd to the 5th, Venus, Mars, and Pluto, all three of them in the sign of Capricorn. And on March 6th, Venus and Mars conjunction in Aquarius. That beginning of March, get ready, do what you need to get yourself prepared and ready for springboard time at the beginning of March. April 12th is a great conjunction of Neptune, Pisces, Neptune and Jupiter in Pisces, whether that is, an actual event or, an ongoing peak. I think that we'll see for the first quarter of 2022, while Jupiter is in the sign of Pisces, we're still dealing with the pandemic at the level, it's hitting its high watermark right now here at the start of the year in terms of the numbers of the Omicron and so forth, right? So pandemics can be lasting. Cholera and yellow fever and those kinds of things lasted for 5 years. The AIDS pandemic lasted for a lot longer. There's some things that continue for a lot longer. Do they continue at a front runner level? Well, they kind of get integrated into into our reality. On May 10, Jupiter enters Aries to October 27. October 22 is the Sun-Venus conjunction, which starts a next cycle in terms of all Venus-related archetypes here, relationships, money, and survival matters. October 30th, Mars in Gemini turns retrograde to January 12th of 2023. And that Mars in Gemini is going to re-stimulate the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction of earlier in the year. So we may have a revisitation of a flare-up of, pandemic numbers in the fall. And of course, that November 8 total lunar eclipse is the USA midterm election. Here's some also some key dates. Mercury retrograde cycles. We have generally 3 Mercury retrogrades in the course of a year. And all of the retrogrades in 2022 start in air and back into Capricorn, back into Earth, I meant to say. So that's interesting because air signs are mutations or mutable or mobilizing, and then Earth are solidifying archetypes here. So very interesting to see. Again, if you have any natal planets that are encompassing these degrees, then the retrograde cycles are going to be important for you. I mentioned the nodal axis shift, I mentioned the eclipses, and the outer planet retrograde cycles, which happen every year. There's the list for you. Saturn, and one last thing to say is that Saturn is currently traveling through the sign of Aquarius, and Uranus is traveling through the sign of Taurus. And they were the dominant planetary pairing in 2021. They are now loosening their stronghold on one another, but they will come very close together again in the fall. Really, October is when they will be closest, but they're going to be in dynamic tension from about the end of August through November, which encompasses again the USA, campaigning and election time, and perhaps there'll be other, intensification of, politics in other countries as well too. So. And again, that makes for intensity and change and volatility. That's the word I was looking for, volatility with Uranus and Saturn, social, political, geophysical, all right, during those times, right? And note that eclipses also are triggers for geophysical activity as well too, all right? Okay, and so I've come to the end of kind of my synopsis. There is so much more to say, and I thank you for your time. And if you'd like to have a personal reading with me, there is my website address. Thank you.